I'm Carl Seibert. Thanks for joining me. In this video, we're going to work with file names in Photomechanic. We're going to use Photomechanic's rename tool, and we're going to use some variables. So let's get to it. Here we have a folder full of test images. This is a brand new folder full of test images because I kind of felt our old ones were getting some mileage on them, and I just wanted to change them up. So here we have some more Unsplash images to use for a test. Let's pretend we're doing a PowerPoint or some sort of presentation like that, where we want to rename our files in order as we want to present them, either for convenience or because that's just the way we have to do it to make the files load in the right order. This is a common file batch renaming task. In Photomechanic, if you set your sort order to arrangement, you can drag your photos around in any order that you want. So let's do that. We'll drag some photos here. We'll take photos that have streets and bridges and stuff like that in them, and we'll just drag them up to the front of this pile regardless of where their file names fall alphabetically. There we go. Let's say this is the order that we want our photos to be in our PowerPoint. So we'll go ahead and we will select them all, and we will bring up our rename dialog. Now, the rename dialog is so simple in Photomechanic that some people are put off by it. We don't have a fancy repeater function, and we don't have a bunch of buttons, and there's no flyouts. We just basically have this field that we can type whatever we want our file name to be into, and then it'll take care of it for us. So let's clear this. And we want to name these files in sequential order. So I'll tick my sequence tick box here. And what we have done is we've inserted in our field, wherever the cursor was, the sequence variable, which is just an abbreviation enclosed by curly brackets so that Photomechanic knows that it's a variable. The way a variable works is, when a program sees it, it substitutes in place of the variable string the actual information that's called for. So in this case, it's a sequential number. And we have a button here that says Set Sequence Variable, and we actually have a little preview that says that our first sequence variable is going to be 05. Well, let's just set that back to 01, and we will OK that. So now we have an incrementing number. If I hit the button to rename right now, we would rename these photos as 01, 02, 03, and whatnot. And Photomechanic will take care of the file extension for us automatically. But hey, we don't want to just do 01, 02. We need to know what these photos are. And these are Unsplash photos, and there's actually metadata in the file names. File names, in a way, are indeed metadata. Thus, this topic is actually on topic for this channel. So let's see if we can preserve these original Unsplash file names in our resulting file names. So let's put an underscore right there. And then we'll go to the variables list in Photomechanic. Now, in some other programs, when you do file names, there's a little flyout, and you can choose various variables to put in the file name. There's usually just a few of them. There's like a half a dozen or something. In Photomechanic, there are tons. There's probably 100 of them. You basically can have a variable for any field, like IPTC fields or EXIF fields, or pretty much any value that Photomechanic knows. So we'll go over here to our variables list, and we will double click on this one, file name base, and that will insert that. And file name base is just the file name of your photo minus the extension. We don't need the extension here because Photomechanic is going to take care of it for us. So all we have here is the sequence number and the existing file name. And we rename, and there we go, 01, 02, 03, 04, and so forth, with the existing file name still there. And if I change my sort order to file name, we can see that nothing has happened. We really have renamed these files in the order that we want to present them. If we go over here to the operating system's file manager, and this is Finder because it's a Mac, but Explorer on a PC would be the same thing. In the default sort order, we see that we have these photos in the order in which we want to present them, 01 through 16. And here's a point. We have more than 10 photos here, so we needed a 2-digit sequential number with a leading 0. Otherwise, we wouldn't come out with the right sort order of our file names. So, okay, we don't have to use the original file name if we don't want to. We could rename these files with a standing file name instead of the original ones. We could call it the sequence number and then say slideshow. But let's don't do that. We can cut and paste, and we can move that sequence variable around, or any variable in Photo Mechanic can be moved around by cutting and pasting any way you want. As far as that goes, you can just type it out if you type really well. This one's pretty short, as open curly bracket, SEQN close curly bracket. So you could just type. And there we have it. We rename. And once again, now we have these things prepended with a common file name and appended with a sequence variable. And as you can see, the sequence variable starts at 17 and runs through 32. That's an important photo mechanic point. It remembers where you last were in your sequence variable. So if you want to start over again, you need to remember to reset it back to 1. Or alternatively, if you've already got 16 photos and you're doing something and you want to name some more to go in the set, you could start with number 17. So now let's rename one photo. Very often when we work on a photo, we need to rename the resulting photo. Frankly, this would usually happen in the Save As dialog of another program, say Photoshop. And we would, when we saved the photo out, we would click into the Save As dialog. The original photo name would be there, or the original file name rather, would be there. We would click again, we'd get an I-beam cursor, and we could edit it, and we could add something to it. We could append, say, the string toned to it, if we had just toned the picture. So we'll bring up the Rename dialog in Photo Mechanic. And here we go. I don't see the original file name. In most Save As dialogs, the original file name would show, and I could edit it. But I can't do that here, so does that mean that I have to just remember it and type it back in? No, it absolutely doesn't. It's actually quick as can be in Photo Mechanic to do a job like this. It went so quickly, I'll have to go back and do it again to even see what happened. So here we are. We're back in our File Rename dialog. And what I did was I went to the snapshot, and I loaded a snapshot that I had saved that has that file name base variable in it. And then I just typed in what I wanted to append to the file name, and I was good to go. Now, in fact, for something repetitive that you might use over and over again, like toned or master or final or something like that, you could make a snapshot that does the whole thing in one go. So as long as you don't have to internally edit the base of the file name, it's even faster in this dialog than it is in a normal Save As type dialog. Now off camera, I went back to these files and I used the Rename tool to rename them as if they were camera original files. JPEGs in this case, but very often we could be talking about camera raw original files as well. So now we'll take these photos through an imaginary workflow that's got quite a bit of file renaming going on in it. Now we've made a preliminary pass through these photos, and we've made some edits. And now we have these 5 photos, and we're going to go ahead and make a bunch of editorial changes to these photos. We need to have some master images that are saved in a lossless file format. So let's make some master files in the PSD format. That's a nice lossless format. So we'll go to these files, and we will select them, and we will go to Photo Mechanics, Save Photos as Dialog, and we will set it to make PSD files of the original size in the original folder. And look at this. Here's our rename function again. So we can go ahead, and as we make our new files, we can rename them to be the file name base and an underscore and master.psd. Okay, so we'll do that. So that was pretty powerful. In our Save Photos as dialog, we have the same renaming capability that we had in the rename dialog itself. Well, let's say we were going to FTP these photos, or upload them to SnugMug or something else, Zenfolio maybe. In Photo Mechanic 5, that's all done in this dialog, the File Uploader dialog. And here we have it. We have the file rename function in this dialog to rename the resulting files wherever we're sending them. Let's say we just wanted to copy them on our own computer, probably from the camera disk to the computer, but it could be from anywhere to anywhere. So we bring up the copy dialog in Photo Mechanic. That's Command Y, by the way. And here we go again. We have our rename functionality right in the copy dialog. Let's say we're ingesting from a disk. Same deal. Here is our rename functionality right here in the ingest dialog. So that is pretty powerful. We can rename pretty much anywhere we go. So we're now looking at our lossless master PSD versions of these files. We have the original JPEGs here in front of us. Let's just do something about that. Let's just give them a color class and then turn that off so that we're only looking at the files that matter for us right now. Now the next thing up in our imaginary workflow is going to be to mark these master files up with some metadata. So okay, we'll go to the first file, and then we stop and we think. These are master files. So we're going to make renditions from these files, and the renditions will have new file names, and heaven knows what they'll be. So before we go ahead and do the rest of our metadata, wouldn't it be cool if we could preserve these original file names? And yeah, we can. So we'll select them all. We'll go to our Stationery Pad. We'll clear our Stationery Pad, and then we'll go down and we will find a field that might be good for an original file name. And here we have the transref field, which is often used for just this sort of thing. Let's go into our transref field, and this time we'll put the whole file name, extension and all. So we'll put the file name variable in the transref field. And you can see that when I put a value in the field, it turned the field on and ticked the tick box next to the field. And as we can see here, all the rest of our fields are turned off. So what this Stationery Pad will do is it will insert the file name of the photo into the transref field without harming any other fields that may have metadata. In this particular case, these are sort of new photos that we're pretending just came out of a camera, so we can well assume that there is no useful metadata on them, although you can see that there is some placeholder captions. So now we've put our file names on our photos individually in the transref field. And you can see here's the file name for this photo. And as we move ahead, we can see each photo has its own file name saved in the transref field. So that's pretty cool. So let's go on with marking up our photos. So we're going to go to this photo, and wait a minute. I've got the IPTC editor open, and I could, in just a heartbeat, apply a template to this photo. But wait, I've got existing data here in this transref field. I just put it here myself a second ago. If I apply that template, that data is going to be wiped out. A blank field is going to be overwritten over that data. So I don't want to do that. I can't use my IPTC editor in this particular case, but that's no worry, because I can just go back and I can use my stationery pad again. We'll clear it. We'll load a template into it. This is our Joe Photographer template. And we will scroll down to our transref field, and we will make sure, and I will turn on my highlighter for emphasis, we will make sure that the transref field is turned off. Now, if we turn it on and we apply a blank field, it will erase the value that's in that field. If we leave it turned off, though, it will leave that field unmolested. So, okay, I'll just go ahead and begin to caption these photos. And as we do in so many cases, we're going to put a standing caption X matter on each one of these photos, and then we'll go back and we'll customize that for each particular photo. So for our standing information, we'll just paste in here a little bit of hipster ipsum junk type. If you're fans of Greek type, you might want to check this out. I personally find it really kind of amusing. And for this photo, we're going to need to do an individual caption, so we'll do that too. We'll put that right there at the top. And in many workflows, slugs are used. So in a workflow like that, it's not at all uncommon to put a slug at the beginning of the caption. And the slug would refer to maybe a story that the photos accompany, or it's just a set of photos, or maybe it's a set of product photos or whatever. Anyway, we've already been hipsters because we've used hipster ipsum. So let's slug this set of photos Phoenix Lights, because it sounds cool. Since we're being hipsters, we're being a little ironic, and I'm pretty sure that none of these Unsplash photos actually depict Phoenix, Arizona. So there's our slug. Okay, let's copy that, because in workflows that use slugs, it's very, very common to use the slug as the object name of the photo. So I'll paste it down there. And because I'm going to get clever, I'm going to go ahead and replace the spaces with underscores. And we're going to go over here because we've decided in this workflow that our object name is going to be unique for each photo. It doesn't always work that way. Very often the slug stays the same for a whole group of photos. But here we're going to make it unique. So what are we going to do? We're going to go ahead and put the sequence variable in our object name at the end of our slug. Now, we need to go back. We need to remember that the sequence variable has to be set to begin when we begin using it. And in this particular case, it's left over from when I made the files look like they came out of a camera. So we'll set it back to 1. And for whatever reason, we got 3 leading zeros. We only need 1 leading zero in this case. So there you go. Now, our transref field is protected. It's turned off. Our object name field has the slug in it, and it's going to increment a number onto the slug for each picture. And we have the caption for this particular picture, and we'll just apply it. Basically, we were working in our stationery pad in a place where we would often work in our IPTC editor. And we move on to the next picture. Command-I will also bring up the stationery pad. And We'll edit our individual caption, and we'll just apply it. And our object name should have taken care of itself. We should see it increment to O2. Yes, we did. And we can see that our preserved original file name is still here. So that's good. And then we can just move on down the line and edit our captions as we go. And as we go along, we will increment that object name field with the sequence variable, all automatically. So it's important to note that your sequence variable will go ahead and increment each time you use it, whether you use it on a batch of photos or whether you use it one at a time, until you reset it back to 1 or 0, if that's the way you roll. It will go ahead and continue to increment and count up. So, okay, let's assume that we've gone back and we've edited again for some particular purpose. Now we have these 3 photos, and we're going to make renditions of these to distribute or to publish. Let's say we're going to do them for the web. So we'll select them, and we'll go back. And this is an operation that is done in Photo Mechanic really a lot. And we'll go to the snapshot button, and we will apply my Save for Web snapshot settings that I use all the time. And we can see here we're being pretty aggressive, pretty high amount of compression. We're going to subsample our chroma. We're going to resize our pictures to a nice web-friendly, small 2000 pixel wide, 2048 to be specific size. This snapshot actually creates a subfolder and puts the made-for-web JPEGs in that, but we'll undo that. We'll put these in our original folder, and we'll go ahead and rename them. So we know that these photos are named by their slugs uniquely in the object name. So let's go to our variables, and we'll go up here to the IPTC section of our list of variables. And here we have one for the IPTC object name field, whatever value is in there. So we have the object variable. Make that go away. And we'll save again. And now we have JPEGs to distribute made for us, and we'll turn off the originals again. So, made for us by Photo Mechanic in one swooping motion that could have been just saved as a snapshot and done literally in one click. Now we have these distribution files named appropriately for the intended purpose, and in them we have preserved the original file name, which will take us all the way back to the camera original version of the file. If we look over here in the operating system's file manager, here are our new files. And they've clustered together and they've dropped to the bottom in this standard sort order. And that's behavior that you'll see if you prepend a file name with some sort of a standing file name. On the other hand, if you append the existing file name, like we did for these master files, they'll sort in the sort order right next to the original files. And that's a useful thing. In any given situation, you might want your renamed files to cluster together so that they're obvious in the operating system, or you might want them to cling to their originals so that you can very easily refer back to the original file. I'm sure there's more stuff that you can do with the rename tool in Photo Mechanic, and heaven knows there's lots and lots of things that you can use variables for. So if you have a cool use for rename or a cool use for variables, please reach out in the comments here or in the comments on the blog or on social media and let us all know. Once again, I'm Carl Seibert, and until next time, mind your metadata.